My name's Ed Piskor,
I'm Jim Rugg.
and Jim, we hit a little bit of a tipping point with the Brendan McCarthy shoot interview this week. A lot of people have seen the video, and a lot of people have gotten in touch with us, and it's going to yield many future interviews. And it seems like people like to use Zoom, so I figured let's do a little experiment to see how this platform works.
Yeah, we are definitely living in the Zoom age. I don't know how many meetings I have had on Zoom in the last couple of weeks, as I'm sure everybody watching this can relate.
Well, I cannot. So this is my very first Zoom usage whatsoever. And just reading about the phenomenon, I think in December, they said that the user base for Zoom was 20 million, and it has skyrocketed to 200 million users, man.
Yeah, kind of predictable, I suppose. But I guess it works. There's a reason that everybody's using Zoom and not Skype or Hangouts or whatever other million options exist. So far, so good.
Oh man, before all of the craziness started with the public health crisis we're all dealing with and all of that stuff, pretty much that week when it kind of hit Pittsburgh, there was something cool that kind of happened that we didn't even talk about on a Kayfabe Weekly, man. So I thought we would just bring it up right here, man. And it's the fact that that Netflix series called On My Block, On Your Block, On the Block. I don't know what the fuck it's called, but regardless, somebody's a Kayfaber who's a part of that enterprise, man, because on the new season, I think it's season 2, episode number 3, a lot of Cartoonist Kayfabe product placement, man. This girl's bedroom had some Street Angel posters, and the dude's bedroom, he's got a nice selection of Hip Hop Family Tree comics, man. Pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, I'll say I actually know somebody who watches that show, like a teenager that watches it and is a fan of Street Angel and found it in the wild and sent my wife a screen capture of it. So yeah, it's kind of cool, and it's kind of cool to see other people actually catch it. Because it's not a show that I've seen, to be quite honest. I don't think I'm their target audience.
Perhaps not, man. Whenever that kind of thing happens, it's the critical mass that gives you the bum rush immediately. So like that night, I guess, midnight, whatever, West Coast time, the thing must have went live. And then that's when all of the emails and the DMs and stuff started with the little screen caps. And mine, I was like, yours was real cool, but mine just had a topless dude like in front of the damn thing. I'm just like, what is this, man? What the hell is this program?
Yeah, you need to talk to these set designers, figure out like where it's actually going to appear. What else is going on in that scene?
Chuck's new series came out, Charles Forsman, and he sent me some sort of paperwork and shit, man, and was like, yo, send a bunch of comics and sign this paper, and then we'll see, it'll be placed in this show. But I didn't get any emails about that, so I guess they didn't use my stuff. One of the things I did when I signed the paper, I really asked them to like not make a serial killer or some kind of like pedophile a fan of my comics or something like that, because you could not take that for granted. And there is a real world example that I can point to from a seasoned vet who schooled me on such things, man.
Well, let's hear it, because this is news to me. My stuff I'd be signing those forms for all kinds of unsavory characters to be reading my comics.
I'll paint you a picture, man, and you might know where it's going immediately when I begin discussing, man. But it was the Great Pete Bag. Does that provide a clue?
No, I don't know the story.
It's too bad that there's not a chat room, because it would be fun to see if Kayfabers, like how long it would take for them to get it, man. But here's the story.
It makes perfect sense that Pete Bag Comics would. It's easy to picture where this is going to go.
We'll see, man. So first 5 minutes of the movie Kids, right after Telly the Virgin Surgeon you know, leaves yet another victim in his wake. He goes down, and on the stoop is sitting Casper the dopest ghost, reading a hate comic. And who is Casper but the guy who rapes a girl at the very end as like the climax ending piece of the movie? And Pete Bag is like, I told him they could use it, but I didn't know that a rapist was going to be reading my fucking comics in a movie. So that's why you want to if your lawyer has something to say about it, it's like you almost will never have a product placement thing in there, because I've spun wheels before and had paperwork sent that immediately makes me balk and just give it to the lawyer, and then the lawyer just starts adding all kinds of provisos and stuff, and then the film people don't want to hear about it. It just becomes this thing where you're thinking getting put into this or that. Like, so I often just like the simple homeboy level thing. Yo, can we put this in this flick? And I say yes,
Yeah,
but please don't make a fucking serial killer use it for spank material or some shit.
it's such a nightmare. Whenever we talked to Steve Bissett a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about having no involvement in From Hell, no rights to anything besides that first printing or whatever and Taboo, and still had to sign a ream of paperwork, where it's like, why? If he says no, like, how is this not enough? It's incredible the amount of paperwork that's generated for all of this stuff.
It's one of the beauties of the kind of like small time nickel and dime hustle that comics is, certainly at this point, is that we just don't have all those checks and balances. It doesn't, because it's like, who you're fighting over shekels, you know what I mean? But those movie people out there in Glittertown are planning for such big stakes. They want to cross all those T's and dot all those I's and make sure that your schmuck ass ain't gonna come in the clutch and try to like hoard in on some money and sue them and shit, man. So I get it, but it's fucking annoying, man.
Yeah, I can't imagine how big corporations that do mergers and things, it's got to be hundreds of thousands of documents. Like, you buy a house and you're signing your name 130 times.
I was just thinking, like, I'm looking at my beautiful Italian leather, like, love seat or whatever it is that I have over there to the left, and just going to like Levin Furniture or whatever and buying that was like 10 signatures. I don't even know why. I'm like, yo, I'm giving you money. I'm not doing any payment plan. I'm giving you some money. Like, let me just get my damn couch or whatever. Get the fuck out of here.
I want to know what you're going to do in that couch, Ed.
Well, it is leather, man. It cleans up easy. Is this thing on? So Jimmy, for real, the McCarthy interview has created a situation where we're gonna be thick with interviews for quite a while, and some of these people are Zoom users, man. But I'm very excited. I'm extremely excited, and just decompressing from the Brennan McCarthy conversation. I don't know about you, but I've been thinking about a lot of what he said, a bunch, like constantly. One of my favorite pieces that he mentioned was the part about being kind of like an idea cartoonist, somebody that comes up with cool stuff and then puts it into the comics. And then what would be the opposite to me is like a Dan Clowes or somebody who creates some like an emotionally resonant scene. You know what I'm saying? And I feel more comfortable in that McCarthy school of just like come up with like some wacky stuff. And as soon as he mentioned that, it made me immediately think of Tom, because Tom feels like that kind of cartoonist to me, where he's not trying to make you cry. He's trying to like blow your mind with like a cool concept or an interesting visual.
It fits Tom perfectly. That's the perfect cartoonist that I can think of that is that mold, that idea thing. Obviously Kirby is that guy.
Yeah.
It was just like constant flow of ideas, like a tap being opened or a spring or something. It is different molds for sure. there was a lot about that interview I liked. That was one piece of it. The musical connection I thought was really interesting. Even the stuff he was saying about comparing it to movie making, filmmaking, cinematic techniques. And it got me thinking about other comics and storytelling and things. And something crossed my path about Kubrick's 2001 this week. And I got to thinking about the storytelling in that. You know what, it might have been, it probably was from the McCarthy interview that got me thinking along these lines. But when you think of like 2001 as a cinematic experience, right? It's one of the most visually cinematic experiences in 20th century storytelling. That is not what people are pulling from whenever they go comics influenced by movies and movie storytelling. I wish it was. Like, go that direction. If you want to draw from movies, if you want to pull from like storytelling from movies, look at something like Kubrick's 2001, where the visuals are totally telling that story in ways that go beyond even the narrative stuff. The emotional response you have to that movie is so much based just on these visuals. That's not at all, whenever people describe comics as like cinematic storytelling, it's not at all in that mold. It's totally in like storyboard kind of technique. And there was a lot to think about coming out of that interview. That was definitely something I thought of. And it's interesting coming from him, a guy who has done storyboards, to sort of not want to do that in comics. Pretty interesting. And I mean, I talk about film editing all the time as being an influence on the way I think and the way I try to put panels together. I think it's connected to, Scott McCloud talking about panel transitions. It's just not a thing that I see people really pulling from whenever they say cinematic in comics. And I wish they would. Because we all watch movies. Every cartoonist I know is a film fan. Like there's certainly a lot of overlap between the two media. So we all are watching movies, like pull from that, look at the editing side of it rather than just the composition or, moment to moment storytelling.
I don't want to speak for the man, but I do think that Brendan is happy with the results of the conversation and how the video turned out, because he himself has put us in touch with a handful of people and keeps naming names and is like, "What, you want to talk to this guy?" I'm like, "Yes." One of the people, he's like, "Yeah, I guess he watched the Kayfabe Weekly," and he was like, I heard you wanted heard you guys talk about Hewlett, but perhaps the move would be, and I don't have his contact info, but perhaps the move would be, Alan Martin, or is that the guy's name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I spaced for a second.
He's
the guy
a lot of British Allens.
Yes. Yes. You could play that like some kind of like word salad game with, Alan Grant, Alan Martin, Stephen Grant, Don Martin.
Yeah, there's a rabbit hole to go down that way for sure. Yeah, the interview stuff is amazing. I think I've gotten 3 messages today from different people about different possible interview subjects. And I think about this kayfabe, the way it's sort of morphed and changed and evolved so much already. And the interview thing is becoming a bigger and bigger chunk. And it's something that, I don't know, I wasn't even thinking about whenever we first started. Like, it was always a possibility. We talked to other cartoonists on our own, so it made sense that it would happen to some degree. But it's really kind of gone in a direction that surprises me and just generally delights me. It's been a very fun piece of this video, a very fun piece of this channel in the last several months from my standpoint. It seems like the feedback's been very positive about it. So I agree with you. I think Brendan McCarthy did enjoy it. We've all obviously corresponded with him a little bit after the fact, but just from the interview itself, it seemed like he was very, energized, happy to talk about what we were talking about. So, I came away from that recording feeling very good about it, and based mostly on, what I was getting from Brendan McCarthy. So it was very exciting to talk with him. He's one of those cartoonists that, I hate to say cartoonist, but, like he's he acts like he hasn't heard this from everybody, and that disappoints me. Like all the Brendan McCarthy fans out there, like let him know what you think of his work, because I have these conversations with so many of my cartoonist friends. You know, like he's definitely a guy that's on the radar of a lot of the people I talk to about making comics. So hopefully some of that gets back to him, because I was a little bit surprised. My opinion of him versus his opinion of him, at least, you know, from how those comics have been received. Because I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different people about them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you touched on it a touch, a little bit whenever you mentioned like the Strange Days, um, Velvet Underground kind of thing, and he's like, yeah, everybody who's read Strange Days is a cartoonist, you know, and that's a very cool thing in one respect, but it's not necessarily financially viable. You know, me being a guy who has been to shows where other cartoonists asked the food vendor for half a scoop of ice cream if they could, you know, pay half the price kind of thing, man. And you know what I mean? Not necessarily a whole bunch of money kicking around with the cartoonists who might dig your work.
Yeah, I think being, you know, that's that myth that, you know, if you make a good enough comic or whatever, they will come. And it's like, I don't know. I think that myth is based on the world being fair or something.
Right.
And that came up in a podcast I was listening to this week, this notion of the world being fair. And it's something that like 4 and 5-year-olds from a developmental standpoint fixate on. You know, you tell your kid they can't have this or that, and it's like, why not? That's not fair. But you know, like the world just it just isn't fair. You know, it's not merit based. Like
Right.
you know, you can make the greatest comic, movie, book, you know, fill in the blank, whatever. But it can also be like the tree falling in the forest with no one there to hear it. Like you've got to make sure there's some people around that hear that tree fall. And it'd be nice if you just had to be a great craftsman, but that's only one part of it.
Yes, sir, man. I think that's something that we stress in a lot of our conversations here, and just even having the channel is another vector for us to get our work out there and put the word in the streets and shit like that, man. But the thing that Brendan seemed to dig was having a venue to speak intelligently about the work, and that was sort of verbatim the response of some of the people we showed it to and why they are interested in getting in touch. So what I said on last Kayfabe Weekly about us, like about the strip, Kim and Gary from the tag team belts, man, we're on that road, dude. We just have to we only have about a dozen hours practice, but you know, 2 more interviews will double that. At this
Especially
rate.
if they're like the last couple.
Jimmy, I think the interview Thursday might take a little bit of time.
Yeah, I've been making notes. That's the other part that is, it's kind of a different piece is I think about Gary Groth, big fan of the Comics Journal and all those interviews and reread them and stuff, read a lot of them when they were coming out. And I think like the difference is we've been doing this like weekly and it is a lot of notes to prepare in a week. But I guess it helps. I mean, so far we've known everyone, you know, known their work going in. So the prep hasn't been too overwhelming, but I mean, some of these guys are giants. You know, you think of, again, think of Steve Bissett, and it's like the resume of that guy. You know, you could pick any one item out of a dozen things on his resume and spend the whole couple hours just talking about that one item. So I'm happy to have the chance to record, to talk to some of these guys that have been around for decades and have really done stuff in comics history and have a chance to just sit down with them. You know, we talk a lot about bits of history that weren't recorded, you know, people that have passed on, and it's a sad version of this, but it's great to be able to talk to these guys and really get some of it on record.
To break kayfabe, we basically haven't spoken together since last record session on Thursday, and in the wake of the Brendan McCarthy conversation, some of the people who have gotten in touch are in what they would call, what Dave Gibbons would call an advanced age. And when I drop some of these names on you, we're gonna have to start to prioritize and set me on the path like that makes the most sense for getting these conversations on the record, because I think some of the stuff will really stoke you out. But maybe I should have told you before we hit the record button, just in case if we do use this thing. Now, your audio sounds great to me. Does mine sound reasonable?
Yeah, it sounds fine.
Now, I'm wondering if when this thing encodes, if it starts to get garbly, because I did some test ones before I spoke to you, and when it compressed or whatever, I wasn't happy with it that much, man. It started to get a little gobbledygook, artifacting and shit. But you look really smooth. I think I would try to, if there's a way to get like a background image, because there's just like these black bars.
You know what? Oh, okay. I was going to say behind us, you can do it.
That's what I would want to do.
But the sidebars, I'm not sure about.
No, not sidebars, just above and below. There are black bars. So I would want to put some kind of image there whenever we talk to a subject, if we use this platform. Anyhow, that's thinking out loud. But for the Kayfabers who just popped in or whatever, oh yeah, this isn't streaming. That's
Yes.
one of the like if it comes to it and we have to subscribe to this, it's like $15 a month, and then that creates the possibility to record kind of directly into a stream, which is valuable. Imagine having 10 great retailers all in a conversation at once and putting our brains together like, what the fuck do we do, guys? You know what I'm saying? Like, that would be worth a $15 subscription for that month to just corral that kind of brain trust.
It's fun to think in those terms, because I feel that with the newsletter, we're going to start paying for a newsletter provider.
Yeah.
So how do we actually, like make the newsletter pay for itself now?
Right.
It's brilliant to think like $15 isn't too much to sign up for something, but what advantage do you take of it? And the idea of like, let's get 10 retailers, let's use whatever we're paying for here. Let's try using that. And that would be a great one, just off the top of your head.
Yeah. The other thing too, like with the volume of people who, like, we're building a little bit of a rep with these interviews. People are really digging them, and it's creating more opportunity with more people. As we've been saying throughout this recording, maybe it would get to the point where it's like two interviews a week or something, and maybe you don't want to do that commute, 2 times. So then we do it this way. Another thing that I'm hoping is dope whenever this thing encodes is if we keep your lip sync on point, because that's like the one thing that really freaking sucks about the Skype. And I've been watching, some mainstream media type gimmicks that you have been using Skype. They're dealing with the same issue,
Right.
So it's not something that I'm fucking up, even though it keeps me up at night. Like, what can I do to fix this? If this is a solution, then maybe this is the solution. A lot to think about with this stuff here, man.
For sure.
What else, dude? What did we put out this past week?
Put out the Brendan McCarthy interview, and then today put up Dave Cooper.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm so excited to put the Dave Cooper piece up.
Yeah.
Because, like, me for 20 years. I've probably been talking about his comics for 20 years. Like that stuff. I did a lettering video months ago, and in a lot of ways, like, Weasel would be lettering part 2. There's so much about his work that I admire, and really we just scraped the surface. Like, getting into Weasel is a pretty small piece, because like that dude's great cartoonist, very successful painter, animator with quite a few credits under his belt, going all the way back to Futurama, and now short filmmaker. So it's like that is a super talent. And I'm excited to get some of his stuff on the channel. I don't think it'll be the last time we look at Dave Cooper stuff or talk about Dave Cooper art and storytelling and stuff. So I'm glad to have it up, because we have a list of these things. You can see piles of comics behind me. Like, there's no shortage of stuff I want to put on the show. It's a matter of time as the great, like, get 1 or 2 of these a week, you know? So
Right.
it's awesome to get Dave Cooper up, because that is a guy that I've been looking at for a long time, is a huge influence on my work. Right behind me are 2 pieces by Dave Cooper. So, you know, I don't have too much stuff on my walls, but he gets 2 spots. So I was excited to put that one up, and excited to see the response. You know, like, it got shared quite a bit on Facebook with people having nice notes about it. So Cartoonist I like, and I like to see whenever other people respond the same way. You know, a lot of Dave Cooper fans out there, I think, or at least a lot of overlap between us and Dave Cooper fans and Cartoonist Kayfabe.
I'm zooming in on your video as we speak, man, and I'm trying to see if that pile of comics underneath your light switch behind you, if that's like a pile of gun fury.
Oh man, just look at the piles of comics are like everywhere. It's a lot of comics in this room, Ed. If a fire broke out in this room, I'm not getting out.
Oh, don't even say those words. Don't even. I try to be the most responsible neighbor ever, too, man, because I live on the bottom floor of a house, have a neighbor upstairs, man, and it's like there's so much paper here. Like, you got to keep the battery in those fire in that smoke detector, man. Keep it fresh. Though something has been happening the past like 2 weeks, man. My smoke detector's been getting hyper vigilant. So after I take a shower, I'll like watch a flick or something, and then my smoke detector goes off because the steam of the shower is tripping out my fire alarm. So I don't know if that means it's on its last legs or what. Something I have to address, perhaps.
Yeah, I'd look into that. That's kind of odd.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know that Steam should trip that.
Just started happening like the past 2 weeks. So might be something weird up with it, man. How over the past week now, just like Jimmy and I, we still are pretty well self quarantined during our week to week, man. But I did expose myself once by going to the grocery store, Jimmy, probably the day after we recorded on Thursday. And what I do, first off, knowing that I have to go to the store fills me with enough anxiety that I don't even sleep that well the uh, the night before. So I get up extra freaking early, and they let the store that I use, they allow the first responders, and I don't even think they allow the elderly with them now. I think that's changed.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, first responders, it's awesome, let them in, but I would think that's a group that's possibly exposed. So, like, don't let them in whenever elderly are in. Like, that's two bad groups to mingle.
Sure. Yeah. So, but when this thing started here in town, it was the elderly get to go to Giant Eagle at
Yeah.
6 a.m. That's now changed, I guess, and it's the first responders who get to go to the grocery stores. So like um, I get there 6:45, and I pretty much just like wait right outside. There's nobody around. All the other people who are smart as me coming in early, they're just chilling in their car. Um, but one thing that I noticed was the buses are running, and there's caution tape about 6-10 feet behind the first pole
Mhm.
that one can hold in the bus has caution tape kind of like blocking you from the driver. So one thing that I was wondering was like, how does one even pay to like ride the bus? I mean, they must make it free. I think it might be free right now, because I have no idea. There's no coin box or whatever back there, man. But I found just all these workarounds and all these adaptations that we're making kind of like as a society to just try to like get by in the safest way possible. Like a couple weeks back, it started with just like the tape at the checkout line, and then it's now graduated to like printed decals that say like stand here. And then you picked up the kayfabe boxes this past week. There's like that little sneeze guard or whatever, little plexiglass
Mhm.
blocking you from the person working there. Man, I'm thinking about those people a whole lot. Like before this went down, um and I would go to the grocery store, I like seeing old man Ed at the checkout line, And I didn't care that he was super fucking slow and shaky from whatever shit he has. But I just want to see him. I like the guy. You know, I don't want him to go any place, man. But when I went there, you know, 7 a.m., he was working, and I'm just like, oh no. You know, he's an old dude. So you know, I hope everything's good. But tensions are high, dude. And ev- I since we locked down, I went to the grocery store 2 times. And the first time I saw just kind of like arguing over yonder. This past time, aggression's directed toward me because I make sure to get a whole bunch of shit. I'm not trying to go to that store often. You know what I'm saying? So I got like $200 worth of stuff, and I used the self checkout thing because I didn't want to even fuck with, you know, somebody ringing up my shit. Um, Now, if you have $200 worth of stuff, you can imagine it's quite a bit of stuff. And you know, ring it all up, and it's at the end in the big pile, and this big fucking beefy yinzer dude immediately like swipes his card and like starts to, you know, scan his shit, and is just staring at me. And every, say, 10 seconds, because it takes a while to bag all that
Yeah, yeah,
stuff,
yeah. I do that. I self check out now too for same reasons.
the guy just going and then it's like, motherfucker, like little shit like that. And I'm just like, how do I dematerialize these bags so that you can speed through here, sir?
By the way, this guy's grocery shopping at 10:30 in the morning. Like, I think he has time.
Right.
What's he in a? Where is he going to go? What's he in a hurry for?
7 in the morning.
Even early, you know, even earlier. So I don't know, man. I haven't been out much. I didn't go out this week. My wife actually grocery shopped this week, so I have not exposed myself at all to any public anything this week. And probably won't before I see you on Thursday. But I can understand people being, you know, I mean, look, my life hasn't changed that much, but
Right.
you know, like imagine somebody who's out of work and at home with their kids out of school. You know, like these are people whose lives have changed drastically. So I'm sure that there's a lot of, you know, it's just that it's that lack of a tether. You know, you need that thing that's like the constant, and there just aren't a lot of constants right now. You know, I have my constant is right here in my drawing table.
It feels
You
good,
know,
doesn't it,
it,
Jimmy?
dude, it is the lifesaver. You know, like
Yeah.
literally, it feels like the lifesaver. Like whenever I'm getting overwhelmed by whatever, go log a couple hours there. You know, like it fixes a lot. I was having a bad week last week. I went a few days without any exercise, and I could
Mhm.
feel that difference just being at home. And I know that people don't exercise, you know,
No.
like I don't know what percentage it is, but I'm sure it's, you know, 15% or something of people that exercise. And just not exercising for 3 days, like I was ready to start climbing the walls, and just could feel the difference. You know, it's, I'm sure, part psychological, but part physical too. And so I've been trying to be more vigilant on that these last couple of days, and it makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
But I
expel
don't
that
think
nervous
everybody does
energy.
it. And
Expel
I'm
that
sure
nervous
it's food, you know, what people eat makes a difference. Like I know if I eat poorly for a day or two, I feel it. You know, and I think people don't pay attention to those things. So I spend a lot of time trying to avoid those feelings. Like I've
Yeah.
been through a couple of dark periods of that sort, and it's like, you know, it's a fair amount of my resources go to that, whether it's exercise or diet or trying to sleep right, you know, a lot of attention to those things. And, you know, for some people it's not an option. For some people, I don't know that they even think about it.
I think that's been my biggest change since all of this stuff happened is I have been more mindful of catching an adequate amount of sleep. Like whenever I was working on that second part of Red Room, I was able to do that 5 page a week, like blast. But that would involve waking up sometimes at 3:30 a.m. after going to bed at like 10:30 or something like that. But with the things that they say about how the bug will probably pass through all of us at some point, and that's a scary thing because it's just like you don't we as a species have added intelligence to our form of Darwinism, survival of the fittest. Like Bill Gates will not beat anybody in a fight, but he he, he rises above. He gets to pass on his genes type shit. But I don't like this idea of like not knowing, of like there's this like X factor that could jump inside you and decide you are no longer, fit or whatever, and take you the fuck out. But just with the thought in mind that maybe I'll get it or something, sleep will be such a luxury, because just if you ever, whenever I would ever catch like the flu or get some sort of strep throat or something, I would get that hacking cough, and then like the second you get horizontal, it just immediately starts, and then
Yeah.
I've had it where it's just like I couldn't get a proper rest for like 3 days, of just like you get prone and then you just are hacking your head off. And I'm sure this is worse. So it's just like, I'm not taking any of that stuff for granted, man. Like every meal, I try to just like savor the mere fact that I have an appetite.
I agree 100% with what you're saying, Ed. Why don't we all live this way all the time?
Because mangaka
again,
don't.
Like you could get, any of us, you could have an aneurysm while we're speaking here, like there's just no guarantee on any of this stuff. And, you have a grandparent or something whenever they pass, and you realize like, whether you live 40 years or 80 years or 20 years, like it's fast, like it's over in a heartbeat. Like we should all, maybe that's something that comes out of this. It's just people, I don't know, appreciating each meal or a good night's sleep. Because like it's not a given, even if that's what you've had up to this point in your life, it's not a given that that's how it is. It's not that way for a lot of people under a million different circumstances. So pretty good thing to take maybe just into everyday life, and knock on wood, even if you stay healthy, it's not a bad way to go through life, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Now, like all this
The
stuff I
sleep
said,
thing though, I think the sleep thing is connected to health. Like
definitely is.
whenever we do comic book shows, I have a pretty good track record of not getting con crud, or whatever we want to call that.
Right.
And I swear it's sleep based. Like I try to get 8 hours of sleep at these cons when I know lots of people that are up until 4 or 5 in the morning, and then back on the show floor the next morning, and it makes a difference. Like that sleep is also a help in at least low level, combating whatever germs and things.
Yeah, we're proper old men now, man, and we can track it just through the Heroes Con, because like when we started going down there, we'd hang out with Evan Dorkin until 5 a.m.
Who, by the way, older than us, and would always be up whenever I was like, I'm tapping out, like
holding court, man. And then of course now, man, for years and years, it's just like, let's not hang out. Let's not have a million people in the room. Let's try to go to bed at like 10 or something, man. It gets easier because I get anxieties beforehand and just don't even sleep that well the night before we travel. So it's like I'm dead on my feet that first night. Now,
diet too always suffers on the road.
Sure.
No matter how well you try to eat on the road, it's not as good as, if you have a good routine at home, you're just not able to match that on the road. At least I'm not.
Cracker Barrel ain't going to do it, man.
No, and especially like Cracker Barrel at, late at night and maybe early in the morning. Not good long term for sure.
The comics publishers, they like to save a couple dollars here and there, man, when they can. So whenever I would get brought West Coast or whatever, they would I would be shacking up like at their crib or something, and midnight to them is just midnight to them. That shit is 3 a.m. to me, and I hate when those motherfuckers make me feel like I'm being a punk. When I'm like, can you just please, man? Like, can I just go home? And it would get to the point where they would like, the first time I ever heard of Uber, they like got me an Uber, and they were like, yo, man, here's a key. Go take a nap, go to sleep, man, because I was like being a bitch. Because I'm just like, I just don't like, I got off a plane this morning. I'm all twisted up.
Yeah, and you probably got on that plane at like waking up here at like 4 or 5 in the morning.
Yeah, 6 a.m. flight, layover at Chicago O'Hare. Now you put me down in LA or Seattle or something, man. I just wanna rest my dogs, dude.
I'm with you. Nobody's a bigger party pooper than I am.
I learned it from watching you, Jim. And you know what? That's creates a sustainable career, man. These fuckers partying hardy and shit. It's starting to show. It's starting to show on them, man. You know, we still are retaining our vampiric, boyish good looks, man.
And by the way, those West Coasters, they're not afraid to shame us whenever they come East Coast either. Like they'll show up at Heroes Con. They're still happy to be up late at night.
Yeah.
It's still the whole midnight 3 a.m. thing still works the same way. It's 9 p.m. their time when I'm ready to go to bed.
I got Jimmy, I got 3 pages done this week, man. My hope is to have 4 done by Thursday.
Well, I got my 2 pages done, and today was actually a writing day for me.
Nice.
I don't know how much we've talked about that, but basically I have a very loose outline of what I'm doing. Basically a sentence or 2 per page laid out, so I know my page counts and things like that. And then my writing day is turn that sentence into a page with layouts.
Yeah.
So they are, it's probably not the most efficient way to work, but it's fun to switch the gears. You know, like the writing day is like put on the other hat and go into this mode. And that's going to be my work plan then, you know, for the next week. It's like, this is what you're drawing. And so that was today's work. So, you know, another week of the 2 pages a week that I wanted to do. I woke up yesterday and I was probably a little ahead of schedule, but it's evened out. I'm back on pace. So
now when you're talking writing, it's copious thumbnails and like little doodles and shit too, right? It's not just sitting at the.
Whenever I finish up, I'll have, you know, like at this point in the day, I have word balloons laid out complete with text in them. And I have all the layouts. When I say layout, it's much closer to penciled page than it is layout. I'll probably do one more round of like penciling to tighten them up before I go to ink, but it's like to scale now, you know, like the page size that I'm going to work on. So it's pretty detailed, you know, it's a lot. Again, you wake up and I have 1 sentence or 2 whenever I wake up this morning and go to bed tonight. And it's like 2 full size pages ready for, you know, finished art essentially. It's pretty fun because, you know, you have an idea of what you want on that page from the sentence, but actually like whittling that down and shaping it. And as you say, a lot of layouts and thumbnails and, you know, condensing things and moving things around and a lot of sketching. So it's a fun stage. I call it writing, but it's the writing part of comics, right? It's part of it is the visual. This is what I need to communicate in this panel, but some of it's in the drawing. You know, it's not all literally words when I say writing, but it's a different piece of the puzzle. It would be, it's heavy lifting. It's probably the most challenging part. You know, as my week goes on, it gets easier. You know, like I'm not listening to podcasts today. You know, this is the focus is this one piece. And so by the end of the week, like I finish up coloring, and at that point, that's when I'm calling friends. That's when I'm listening to podcasts. You know, you can do all of that stuff because you've made all these decisions are made. Like I'm not relaying out the page on day 5.
Right.
So a bunch of those it's almost like if you start the beginning of the week and you have 100 decisions that you're going to have to make to get to the end. At that point, 96 decisions have been made, you know, and they're more or less good. Like maybe a couple will be revised in a minor way, but you know, at that point, it's just a few things now. Just, you know, taxi that plane to back to the terminal or whatever. Like we've landed, we've done the hard parts, and it's kind of enjoyable. But having the weekly schedule helps. I think it really helps with the efficiency part. You know, maybe you pull a little bit of a later night one night because you know you want to hit this marker, and having the week is. We've talked about it in the past. I said a couple years ago I would have like 1 day a week off, and that became like a real measurable unit of time. It helps. It's a reset. If you don't, I find personally, like when I didn't have that marker, when it was like tomorrow's the same day as the last 37 days in a row, it's a little bit of that when you wake up and you have one task to do and you're like, this could take 2 hours, but I have all day to do it. And weirdly, it ends up taking all day. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of that when I don't have those markers, I suffer from that. If I know it's like, this is just what I'm doing for the next 6 months, not as much urgency as there is if it's like, you've got 6 days to get this part done.
I also do the little kind of bullet point per page kind of gimmick before really starting to make the thing. I need to know what's going to happen on every page in some broad way. When we finished work last Thursday, I had some bullet points that, as my story was evolving, the immediate next page or 2 pages didn't make perfect sense with how the story sort of developed as I fleshed it out. So I had to take a little extra time with that stuff. And in the process of doing that, the ending of this story just got fucking way better. And it's like it all clicked and it all made sense. And I'm saying that now with the fact that there's like maybe 9 pages or so left to go, maybe 10. I finished 14 of 22, whatever that is. So maybe there will be an even better ending. But something I've been doing, another sort of change that I've made in these recent times is, I think diet-wise, I think I eat about 3/4 of what I used to per day as sort of like a way to stave off even having to go to the grocery store in some way. Like, just instead
You're
of
gonna say the
eating.
bathroom. It's like the Todd McFarlane method.
No, like, instead of 3 eggs for breakfast, man, I'll just get 2. Instead of eating like a whole beet in my salad or something, man, I'll just like a little half. So it's just like rationing the stuff out. I think that has created a situation that makes me sleep more. Like I just like have less energy in my day, and I think it's either like the emotional toil of sort of being frazzled with news and shit like that, or just like not eating what I'm used to. Um, so it's like I have been just sort of I poop out, I powder out like sort of earlier than I used to. But it's also a thing of revolving my week around kayfabe, and I sort of like doing the early session, especially when we do a big interview, because I want to edit it and have it ready to go that day. Like that's my day to like really spend, on that part of the career or whatever. So it's all working out and everything, man. But never mind.
I've been doing this thing this week. I don't know if you want to keep this in or not. Have you heard of Wim Hof? He's this guy that's like a health nut type guy.
No, does he only eat red meat or something?
I don't know what he eats. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole, but he has a breathing method that's derived from some like yogic practice, but I think he's modified it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it involves basically you're breathing for like 30 breaths, and then you hold your breath for a certain amount of time, and then you do it again. So I've been doing that all week. I don't know if it has any effect whatsoever. It's weird. Like, I'm just not sure about it.
Did you ever do that thing when you were like in middle school where
Yes.
you put your friends to sleep?
Mm-hmm.
How about you on the next Kayfabe Weekly, man, you breathe a bunch, man, let me push on your chest against the wall on the camera. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm eager to do that again. Whenever we were kids, we would do that stupid shit. And I don't know, we were probably 11 or 12, something around that age, like elementary school, 5th, 6th grade. And we would just do it from freestanding, and then you just fall. It's amazing that none of us like fractured our skulls or did some because that's what they warn, like any of the risk of passing out, like that's your big risk, is falling and busting your head. It's all we did. Just everybody taking their turns.
Yeah, it's amazing that we still have all our fingers and toes with just some of the dumb shit that kids do, and that's certainly one of them. Now, I might not have had a stutter before I did that shit. You know what I mean? So I don't know that I came out of it unscathed.
I've seen those shows. I think one hit gives you the stutter, one headshot, and then like the next one will fix it, or cross the eyes. I think that's how they do that too.
Yeah, I don't think I had any of that severe head trauma. Which, by the way, if Kayfaber's out there, type in Hulk Hogan, Richard Belzer, and you'll see exactly what Jimmy means,
Yeah,
man.
literally, that's the perfect example of it. Surprised there's not a dark side of the ring for that one.
Yeah, man. All it took was a little fucking 100 stitches, and Richard Belzer got a chateau in France for that.
Yeah,
You see
yeah,
the
I'm
moment
sure.
too. You see the moment too, like when Hogan like wrenches in on his neck. You see Belzer's arms go out and then just go fully limp. And Hulk Hogan's such a fucking meathead that he just dropped him on his freaking dome, dude. Belzer falls to the ground with a thump. He gets up. He gets out of it in in professional fashion, like even does like a little plotsy pratfall, like, hey, we'll be right back. He turns his back, he looks behind him, and then you see it. Blood all over his suit, back of his head is mashed up. He got fucked up, man.
He gets put out quick too, right? It does not take long for Hogan to knock him out. There, I've heard stories of Rowdy Piper doing that to people, kind of like as a party favor, but very quickly, like that hold is a very effective hold for knocking somebody out.
Yeah, I'm a layman, but I believe that's the cutting off of the carotid artery, and it turns out your brain needs blood.
Yeah, yeah. Who'd have guessed? Um, I continued watching Newsroom this week, Ed. I'm almost
Oh,
done with it because there's only I think it's about 2.5 seasons long. That third season's very short, like 5 or 6 episodes.
so you saw all of season 2?
All of season 2 and a couple of episodes of season 3. Um, it continues good. I don't have any great revelations about it. I am eager to see more Aaron Sorkin stuff, probably television stuff, I guess I lean towards. I'm curious to see how the show wraps up, and I was planning to finish it up, before we saw each other on Thursday. So I'll probably have, I'll probably watch an episode after we hang up tonight, and probably the last 1 or 2 tomorrow. I don't know if there'll be any great revelation to how he wraps up the series. I watched it with my wife, and at the end of season 1, she commented on that would have been a good wrap up to the series. Like, it felt complete and satisfying. And I kind of felt the same way, like the end of season 2 felt that way to me, where it's like, okay, that's a good, I don't know how much they know in terms of additional seasons or how any of that stuff works. Like The Wire, was renewed or something after they thought it was canceled. So I don't know what, Sorkin and company were thinking with it, but it felt very satisfying as like, if this is the end of it, good. It's weird to me that they come back with like a half season or something for season 3. So I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to wrap up. And I don't think any show would do this, but it would be fascinating if you were going to end a show to just kind of end it unexpectedly, 6 episodes into the season or something. Like if you really wanted to have some kind of shock ending, that would be the one. It'd be The Walking Dead, like Kirkman just ending the comic book series without telling anybody until that issue hits. So I don't think that's what happened. I'm sure everybody knew how many episodes they were making of season 3, but so far so good.
I only saw episode 1 of season 2 so far. It's real hard for me. Like, even drawing on this small paper, I seem to be fixating, and just luxuriating and losing myself in all the little noodling and the little details and shit. So it's taken as long as anything. It feels like, if you go on my Instagram stories, I just kind of like snap the progress, and by the time I start to put pen to paper, after doing like the penciling and the roughs and all that stuff, it could be 12 hours later, and it's just like, where did all that fucking time go, but when I'm done for the day, it's like, oh man, I don't think I could stay up an hour, or, I don't want to have to fight it. So it's hard for me to check one of those out, but I did see, I've been keeping up with Better Call Saul, and that's been really good. What's interesting about it as an exercise is that they have this like circumscribed destination that
Right.
we already know about. So to try to work within those parameters as a creative person, that is a fun exercise that would be an enjoyable kind of thought puzzle to play. As a viewing experience, those are all the least interesting parts of this program. In fact, when you get certain reveals of players who were in Breaking Bad, at first it was real fun, real cool, but now I fully am. I like sigh whenever it like cuts to the parts of those people, because it's just like, ah, man, this is just like where they try to shoehorn stuff to try to make it fit into what we've seen in the
Yes.
future. And it's just no fun. Like, the cool stuff really is the relationship with Odenkirk and the girlfriend character, Kim Wexler, who I still maintain as being like one of the greatest television characters in pop culture of in, I'd say, the past decade. You know, like, just how they shape her character is really fun. Now we're in season 5 of Better Call Saul, and there were 5 seasons of Breaking Bad. It doesn't seem like we're building to, well, I can't say that, because this Kim Wexler character is not in Breaking Bad, so she has to go somewhere. But it doesn't feel like we're building to that moment, and it makes me wonder, like, will they just keep this train running? Like, the spin-off show is going to have more seasons than the principal show. Like, that's an odd thing. But you can like either of those programs the best for different reasons, you know.
Yeah,
Like,
of course. Interesting with Better Call Saul. Like, there'll be writers, and I'm thinking of Neil Gaiman in Sandman era, where I would read interviews with him and he would talk about, like, he knows where, you know, things are going, but he's not positive how they get there.
yeah.
You know, so like it could expand or whatever. And it feels like Better Call Saul has had some of that effect, because I'm sure he didn't sit down and they said, hey, you can have, you know, let's start with 5 seasons or 6 seasons. You know, you sort of have to have ideas on that. And if you get 2 seasons, you know, you've got to get it to that point, as you say, you know, this end point, I guess. You know, how do you get it there? So it's interesting, that expansion idea. Comedians will talk about that with telling a joke. Like, if it's really hitting with the audience or whatever, you draw it out. You know, you keep going as long as they're giving you the response that you want. You know, so a lot of that stuff is expansive. You know, I guess if you're a good storyteller or whatever, and you have the audience eating out of the palm of your hand, or the advertisers or whoever, you know, is signing the checks, and everybody's on board.
I think IFC, or wherever that show airs first, I think they I think the channel like bought in high with them to start, because I wasn't feel I thought that I was above hate watching something, you know, until like that came out. And but I stuck with it, you know, and I'm just like, I just have to see, because I give these people some equity because they impressed me with the
Right.
original program. So I give these people some equity and trust that they have something in mind. And it's a very decompressed story. Like, if it would have ended at any of the previous seasons and not gotten picked up, it would have been extremely unsatisfying, because it's this like long thing that's playing out, to the point that they're showing like little doodads and like making little allusions to stuff that must have been in the earlier seasons that I just forgot about. Like, this is the only show that I've watched every week new, since I can remember. You know, like, I never watched Sopranos when it came out. I never watched any of that, you know, the greatest stuff on television. This is the only thing. Yeah, so I forget all these like little things that they're showing off or whatever, man. But I think they're moving toward like the season finale, and it's just like, where is this shit going? We'll see.
I was thinking of in regards to Newsroom, a possible similar show.
Mhm.
And maybe whenever you're looking for something, it'd be worth watching an episode or two to get your take on what I'm about to say. So when I think of Newsroom, it's a bunch of characters that are very smart and have sort of their own agency,
Right.
and some tensions between them, you know, like these relationships of different people trying to get ahead of each other. And Veep is the show that I would say is of similar quality, where it's all the characters are smarter than me. you know, and there's some pleasure to watching that as opposed to, say, your average sitcom where like all the characters are less smart or whatever. You know, and they're all probably more ambitious on Veep in terms of their personal agendas than on Newsroom, but, you know, like everybody has their own motivations. So like whenever they align, we'll work together, but make no mistake, like I will cross the street to get, you know, to get ahead of you or whatever. So I see a lot of parallels there. And with Veep, it's interesting. There's some common ground because it's politics and news. They never allude to what party she's a part of, you know, and
cool.
and it allows you to sort of like either side could enjoy that, you know, that point of view, because it kind of illustrates just how similar these parties actually are to one another. But it reminds me of that a little bit. And then the other show that it reminds me of is Deadwood, the HBO like Western. And what reminded me of that in Newsroom is the way people who are adversarial at times, ultimately the rules change around where it's like, now we're working together because like a bigger enemy has shown up. And that happens a little bit, maybe in season 3, I guess, of Newsroom, end of season 2, maybe beginning of season 3. And it reminded me a lot of Deadwood, where it's like Swear Engine and Bullock, I think, was the main guy, are like teamed up against, you know, like a third party who has now entered the town and is, of course, worse than either of them. And that part makes me wonder, like structurally, if that's just the inevitability of a series, you know, as you raise the stakes, casts expand. And it happens in Newsroom season 2, where it's like a couple of new characters join up, you know, a bigger story emerges, almost like the formula for a sequel or something to a movie.
Yeah, you see how the different characters in like just talking season 1 of Newsroom, you see how the different characters, if it was any kind of like a lesser creative team, the archetypes that these characters would fit into, but the maturity of the construction of that just doesn't allow for the characters to be put in such a simple box. So for instance, like the one producer guy who has the blonde girlfriend,
Don Kiefer.
What's that?
Don Kiefer.
I'll believe you.
I usually don't know characters' names.
He would be a villain
exactly
in any other program, and it would be so clear that he's like the guy that you just would never want this wholesome little blonde girl to ever be with. And then you got that guy who's like clearly like the nice guy, producer guy. Now he's been a nice guy. Yeah. He's been a nice guy, producer guy the whole time. So there's got to be one episode where he does something shitty. I'm waiting for it, because these characters are all multidimensional, and they make it a point to like explore the different dimensions to these guys, and like what make everybody could be a douchebag. Everybody was a bully to somebody.
Yeah, I like that part a lot. It was from the very beginning. It was something we were talking about, because that producer, he's the perfect example. In that first episode, he does come off as like, this is going to be the bad guy, and he's not. And it's so much better than if he were. You know, if you think of like a workplace dynamic, and I realize there are always coworkers that you don't like or something, but realistically, it's not like they're, you know, villains or doing evil, and you still end up working with them, even if it's somebody that you're not that fond of or whatever. So I like that part, you know, and being able to create drama while not having an obvious villain. I tip my hat to you.
Sorkin's career is something that I aspire to have, and I'm not talking about subject matter or those sorts of specifics. I'm just talking about, he clearly designed his entire career. Well, everything builds to the next thing. So you have A Few Good Men, this military drama kind of thing. He, through researching that, he was offered that flick had success. The play had success. He was offered something from oh geez, what the hell is Meathead's real name? From All in the Family.
I'm so embarrassed I can't think of it.
Yeah, well, Meathead offered him a future gig to like rewrite some kind of script or something. He decided to like do his own version. Rob Reiner.
Yes, I thought of it as soon as you did. Meathead's so much better.
It is, man. Uh, so he created that flick called American President with Michael Douglas. In doing the research to that, he had all these extra ideas that didn't get to fit into an hour and a 90-minute movie. So West Wing spins out of that. Through the writing process of West Wing, part of his process when he would be tasked with writing a new a new teleplay or whatever they call it in TV, is he would just sit around watching Sports Center. And Sports Center provides the inspiration for him to just get curious about what it must take and what the scene must be like to create such a program. And then, Sports Night comes out of that. And then what would the serious version of a Sports Night be? And that would be the newsroom, you see. And there's just like all these different levels where like each piece of work fits into the next, and
I feel like that's less conscious design in the beginning, though, and just
no,
more
it is
logical.
right. Yeah. Like
I think that's pretty typical of successful creators, because you are exposed to all this stuff through, say, research for whatever project you're working on, and inevitably, like a piece of it or some element of it captures your attention, right? And it almost pulls you. In hindsight, it looks like design, but in like real time, it's almost just like, well, I'm interested in this, or I find myself, this is what I'm watching, this is where my focus is going.
For sure. Like I sort of misspoke about like the design part, because you're right, it does like
I do think there's
flow.
there's a real, I'm not going to say skill, but there's a wisdom to being open to that piece, like recognizing what you're being drawn towards and being open to that, because a lot of people aren't, like we have that internal editor voice or whatever, and it's like, that's dumb, or there is no other show like that. Like, how many shows are there? The Sports Night's a great example. Like, how many shows are like that? I can't think of another show that's quite like that one. So it would be very easy in your mind to be like, fine, I like watching Sports Center, but that's not the script to write, because it doesn't exist. That's not a format. Like, what's the safe? What's the sitcom? What's the like this other popular thing version that I should be working on? Like that. It's vision in a way. It's also trusting yourself. It's almost like trusting your voice.
And he has a very clear voice. Like when I heard of Newsroom for the very first time, it was a Quentin Tarantino interview on Howard Stern show, where Tarantino said this is like the best television show that he's seen in decades or something like that. And I just never took the time to check it out. Once my pop culture knowledge, man, really stops at about 2002, 2003, when Harvey Pekar called my house for the first time, dude, because I've been drawing comics fucking nonstop since, and that's been dominating my my eyes and ears in a lot of ways, man. Like the movies that I put on while I'm working, like I have Breaking Bad playing, like while I ink and stuff. But when I watched it first run, like I would watch an episode during dinner, like every day, and if I'm going to have something visual, I'm going to watch it. Like I wouldn't play something new while I'm working. That does a disservice to the material. Just listen to an audiobook, listen to a podcast. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's horrible to watch something, because like, what's the best outcome here? If it's something good that I like, then I'm not doing the work. And if it's crappy, like, I don't want to watch it at all. Put something else on. You could listen to something better if it's really not worth it.
You know what, man? We drop jewels here on Cartoonist Kayfabe weekly shoots, and I'm gonna hold a good thought, Jimmy, and imagine that when we get off this conversation, when I hit stop on the record button on this new Zoom gimmick that we're playing around with, that it's gonna render and be beautiful and suitable enough for the audience to see, and we'll be able to serve as this week's Kayfabe Weekly. I say that because yesterday at my house, I received a half box from Hans Rickheit, Chrome Fetus.
Interesting. I like that cartoon. I like his work a lot. I've known him for a while.
He sent me some new stuff, and there wasn't like I don't know that this was like a Cartoonist Kayfabe box, but we'll make it a Cartoonist Kayfabe box because it'll look good on the cam, and why the hell not? But it's a bunch of his doubles, and it's a lot of good shit. And there was somebody who sent us Darren M. He sent us like 4 more mystery boxes and spent about $90 in priority mail. So we got those 4 boxes coming, and then Alika Seki of Maui Comics sent us another 4 priority mail boxes, man.
Yeah, and he said that he removed the bags and boards, so it is densely packed with comics.
Yeah, and packed it tight. I have an idea about that too, by the way, Jimmy, man. When we get a particularly interesting box, like this Hans Rickheit box, what we'll do is we'll record the stuff in a stream, but like in an unlisted stream, so we could dole it out as future episodes rather than do like 5 episodes in one day of like this mail thing and a Kayfabe Weekly and all that. We could just sit on some of that, man, and like expend the energy and have it bear fruit the next day or the day after, you see. So some of these boxes might be really, really good, and we shouldn't like keep them in a big kludge where you have to dig through. Like if it's a good enough piece, man, it'll get its own shine or whatever.
Yeah, and like we were saying, the interviews have sort of really taken off.
Yeah.
A lot of the unboxing stuff, you know, like that's one of those things that we started doing, and I wasn't really sure what to expect. And I hear from a lot of people that that's their favorite thing. You know, I mean, it's part of the reason I think Darren M sends us boxes is because a lot of people enjoy that part, you know, seeing us going through these boxes, especially of like old comics where we know half of them, or, you know, finding new stuff. So we need more hours, Ed.
little bit of kayfabe breaking again. Your boy Eddie P will do a little edit. Just like look through those boxes. Just do like a little, just like a little of the corners, man. Because if I see that Valiant logo too much or something like that, man, I might not get any shine.
Yeah, I think we've talked about Valiant probably enough. That's one of the topics we don't need to get too much deeper into. But it is, you know, like a lot of the channels that I follow or watch on YouTube, you sort of have to evolve. You know, there's only so much time. So figuring out mail and the best way to manage all of these things, it's ongoing.
Yep, and that is the exercise right here with this little Zoom gimmick, dude. So we've been at it for a little bit over an hour. We'll cut the stuff short. And you know what? We could do a real clean cut and end the thing the way we end our typical stuff, aside from the Kayfabe weeklies. So Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe. Well, you know what? We're so close. In fact, I'm going to do everything I can to put this live tonight because it might get us to 15,000 subscribers by Thursday, which would be a beautiful milestone for us to hit spiritually.
Yes,
you know?
That would be great. I am in favor of that 100%.
So one of the ways to do that, Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe, hit the bell icon. We'll notify you when future vids are available. And we got a lot of interviews planned coming up, man. So you're going to want to be one of the first, you're going to want to be one of the cool kids, man, and be there early.
Yes, and you can subscribe to our e-newsletter at the link below this video. You can pick up Cartoonist Kayfabe merchandise and t-shirts at the links below this video.
Jimmy, we're both in our own studios. Neither of us have pants on. We have work to do. In the marching orders, bro.
Read more comics.